our learning objective today being that we were going to create a classroom timeline, right? I think we said this morning at morning meeting that some of you have actually had a classroom timeline before. So would you talk to a partner right now and see if you can remember anything that was on your timeline last year? Tell me something that you had on your timeline last year. Nicholas, tell me
We
what
had like the immigrants.
the immigrants. What are you thinking?
We had when the Statue of Liberty was built, and I think it was in the 1800s.
I think the 1800s is when the Statue of Liberty was built. You had that on yours last year. Okay, Kadeas, what do you remember?
When dinosaurs lived.
When the dinosaurs
Long
lived.
ago.
Where was that on the timeline? Do you remember? Long, long ago.
It should be long.
What do you think?
Actually, I think that immigration would be in the 17th because when we were immigrating to New York, they saw the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're thinking that immigration could be in the 1900s, but it even started earlier than that, in the 1700s. I was connecting to your schema. The reason that I was connecting to your schema is because your schema is the things that you have inside of your brain, the things that you know, the places you've been, the things you've done, the books you've read, all of those. Last year, you learned about lots of things and you put it up on your timeline. I'm going to start our timeline this year with what I call a coat hanger. Okay, so I'm not really putting a hanger on the timeline. Okay? It's not a real hanger. A coat hanger, though, if you went into your closet and you opened it up, there's hangers there, and you put your coat on them, and you shut the door when you come in. And this timeline is like closets of time. Long, long ago is one closet. Long ago is another closet. The 1600s that some of you spoke of. The 1700s is like another closet. The 1800s, the 1900s, 2000, even into present day today. Putting your whole class picture on the present part because you guys will also be a part of the timeline. So here's how the story begins, you might remember. America is a nation of immigrants. Immigrants are people who come to a new land to make their home. All Americans are related to immigrants or are an immigrant themselves. So if they're an immigrant themselves, that's why in the 1900s there were still immigrants that are coming. Even today in the United States, new people are coming to our country from other countries. They're immigrants. So you're right, the first immigrants, we're going to talk about where they are on the timeline. But your idea, Malia, when you were talking about how I think that immigration started before the 1900s, you're right, it did. But, Nicholas, you were right, it was still happening in the 1900s, even still today. So, thousands and thousands of years ago, there were no people at all in Americas. Then, during the last great ice age, nomads crossed over a land bridge from Asia to what's now Alaska. These early hunters wandered here more or less by accidents. American Indians, called Native Americans, are distant relatives of those ancient hunters who arrived in North America very long ago. They were the first immigrants to arrive in what is truly the New World. Well, their ancestors actually came to America by crossing over a land area. Now, let me show you what I mean by that. When you were talking, Braden, about the dinosaurs and the plants and things that lived long ago, this is what our world looked like millions and millions of years ago. 50 million years ago, 35 million years ago. That is that long, long ago time period. And before the land actually then comes apart in that way, to look at what it is today, if we were to look at a world map, that's what it would be like. You're exactly right. During that time period of that long, long, long ago would be when mastodons lived. It would be our ice age time of insects long ago. The Ichthyosaurus would have lived long ago. Dinosaurs. So put that up there too to help us remember that. So we have then Native Americans, their ancestors, came across that land before it completely pulled apart and became America. So that's happening long ago. and it's called an explorer. Say that word with me.
Explorer. First day of school.
Just like the first day of school, we're coming to explore third grade, aren't we? Exactly. So there were people who hadn't ever been to America before and thought, we want to come and check out that land. Okay, so we're going to check out that land, and then we're going to go back to the country that we're from and tell them a little bit about that. Well, Christopher Columbus is one of those people who did that. He did that clear back in 1492. But here's the thing. Christopher Columbus thought that he discovered America, but it really wasn't America. It was the Bahamas. The islands right below where America is actually at. So he went back, just as other explorers. He's not the only explorer that there is. He's just one explorer that came to check out new land. So after he told other people about this land, who starts coming then? Somebody you learned about last year. Who starts coming then, Keaton? Yeah, okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. After Columbus crossed the Atlantic Ocean, other European explorers came in search of a new land and riches of their own countries. Stories about this new world that these explorers brought back spread all throughout Europe. And in time, settlers followed the explorers' routes across the great ocean. So they kept track of their path in their boat of how they got here. And that's how other people knew how to come. In their native countries, they often had little money. They maybe couldn't worship at whatever church they wanted to, and they felt like they wanted a new start and a new life. Now, you mentioned some of those people were called pilgrims. Who they had the first Thanksgiving with? Okay. Can you think about who's already on our timeline?
Native Americans.
Native Americans, you're right. So those were some, thank you for agreeing, those are some of the very first immigrants to come. Shraden.
The pilgrims came in the Mayflower.
On the Mayflower, so your dress has some schema. You've studied about them before, haven't you?
Connection because the person who came up from my family
Yes.
was like he was a captain of like their military. He was the captain that came. He was one of the captains. Was Miles Standish? Have you heard of him?
Miles Standish. Yes, I have heard of Miles Standish. Now that we're trying to put these coat hangers up, you see how they're the things that you already know about that are in your schema, that now when we start putting other things up there, you can go, oh, well, that was at the same time as that was happening, or, oh, that makes a connection to this, as you've just been doing right now. Those coat hangers help you start making connections. Now, if you're like, I really want to know what that boat name was because it's really bothering me, could we still go look that up? Can we go find it? Yeah, definitely. That's when we corroborate, or we go look for evidence to corroborate what we're thinking. And we'll talk more about that word a little bit later. So you were talking about those European immigrants coming. As the population grew, the Europeans competed with the Indians over land. And the Indians were pushed off of the land onto what's called a reservation. We have immigrants who are coming and saying, oh, I think I'd like your land. So you're going to need to leave now. How many of you like it if you couldn't stay in the house or the place where you lived, and somebody just came and said, I'm going to move you today? No one's thinking that they would like that? Not all immigrants came to America because they wanted to. Beginning in 1619, millions of Africans were brought to America against their will, and they were forced into slavery. Instead of finding freedom, these Africans lost theirs. All right, that started happening in 1619. So about the same time that the Pilgrims were coming, Africans were also brought. What does against your will mean? What does that mean?
Doesn't it mean like you don't want to, but someone's making you, so you have to, like the Indians were pushed out of their home?
Two great examples. And I think that's maybe why the author chose to put them both on this page, is that both of these groups of people, Native Americans and Africans, were forced to do something that they didn't really want to do.
How How did they get forced to? Like, how did
How did
they?
they get forced? All
Why
right.
didn't they just stay in?
Okay, Sam, that is a fantastic question. But I don't want to tell you the answer today. And the reason I don't want to is because you're going to investigate that. It got pretty crowded, as some of you remember probably from last year when you were studying about those communities. So as they did that, they decided that they were going to move on. Some of them moved westward, like this. Toward the middle of the 1800s, other adventurous newcomers became part of what was called the westward movement. They headed for the new frontiers of the Midwest and the Great Lakes regions. That's where we live right now here in Iowa. So, immigrants came and later decided, maybe I don't want to live in this city life anymore, and I want to go and get my covered wagon full of supplies and head westward, which was called the westward movement because they were moving west. And so those people were called pioneers. Say that name. Pioneers. So you're talking about something else that you guys learned about last year. Who's this? Statue of Liberty. Will you tell somebody sitting next to you what you remember about the Statue of Liberty? Go. Keaton.
It used to be copper.
Used to be copper, but she doesn't really look copper, does she? What color is she now?
Teal is green because of all the weather and ocean water hitting her.
Yeah. So the metal that she was made out of doesn't look the same as it once did.
That they wasn't the Statue of Liberty next to wasn't it by New York?
Yeah, it's on a little island right next to New York. We learned about this document that was so important to our country because it gives us our list of rules. And we actually even made one for our class, too. And you all signed it with our class rules on it. Talk to a partner if you remember to see what that document was called.
Constitution.
They said it
The Constitution.
On the count of 3, tell me what that document's called. 1, 2, 3.
The Constitution.
Got it. The Constitution had to be right when America was beginning because it was our list of what? Rules. All right. So 1787 is where that actually was made. And not having any rights. Because remember, they were coming because they wanted religious freedom. They wanted to go to whatever church they wanted. They wanted to be able to live where they wanted to. They wanted to have enough food, enough things for their family. So the Bill of Rights, those first 10 amendments to our Constitution, were created in 1791. Independence Hall
Yes.
in Philadelphia. And so this is Independence Hall right here. Let's put that up by that as a memory. All right. Now, you thought it was interesting when we were learning about that, of how it was written. What was it written with?
Feather and ink.
Yeah, feather and ink. And they called these quill pens. And so it was actually written back in that time period, in that fancy writing, because we looked at that with that kind of. We have all of our coat hangers on here.